I'm Rachel Phillips. I'm a stained glass artist and I'm from Pembrokeshire. My craft practice is stained glass, essentially working with traditional techniques in historic and contemporary settings, predominantly in commission work. So I work with glass painting, use a lot of glass painting, but enamelling, staining, etching, so kiln fire work, and love using handmade antique style glass. So that just means rather than machine made glass that's got variety and colour modulation, a lot of life to it, and using it in a range of buildings from composting toilets on bird reserves to World Heritage sites and castles, and everything in between. I did a art foundation course, and it was a 2-year, what was then BTEC course, down in Portsmouth, and I had always liked art. I'd always liked three-dimensional tactile art, so textiles, ceramics. I like painting, but I liked applying it to something three-dimensional, and I thought I wanted to do ceramics, so I did that for a year, and then I realised, oh dear, this is not for me. And sort of I looked around and was directed, I think a tutor took pity on me and pointed me towards a clapped out old sandblaster that was in the corner, and I had a go with glass, painting acrylic onto glass, normal acrylic paints. And I was very taken with, this material. It was very basic at that point, and that led me to think, I think I was interested in restoration initially. I think I'd read an article on the Sistine Chapel, and I loved, watching these things appear, that it be restored, and I thought, restoration. And I was advised to do a general stained glass course first, and I applied to do a course at Swansea, and which was an undergraduate course in architectural stained glass. And so I sort of applied all those things I love, drawing and painting and working large scale, which was incredible, doing massive drawings on walls, and learning lots of techniques with glass. That's kind of how it started. But really, when I think about it, I've always loved things like swimming underwater, watching light through water, watching light through trees, like lots of us, really. So it's all of those things rolled into one, really. Tactile nature and light coming together in glass. Glenys Call was, for a time, one of the visual studies tutors. So we always knew when we were going around the right path, because we'd get the Glenys Call noise, which was the ooh, when she would see something that she thought was tasty. It's the best moment in a visual studies lesson. People think stained glass, it's that, and it belongs there. And actually, it's the most glorious. It's just the most glorious thing. And I love that playing what's exposed and what's left, and you start not understanding why it's doing what it's doing, like that. What you see and what's revealed and what's hidden, and it even changes depending which way you put it round, with the transparency and translucency. And I find this a really good size to work at. That's my Glenys Call noise. That's my own patented. And then this is some little etching samples, so you get a much sort of putting drawing back into the process. It's a different quality to these little pond life type trials. And in fact, in a workshop, it's just really exciting to play with it and see, these beautiful half tones. So after leaving university, after finishing my course, I did a couple of things. I wanted to investigate whether restoration was something I wanted to do as a career in stained glass. And I applied to do a placement that the Worshipful Company of Glaziers were running, which was a placement in a studio, and I went and did one down in Holywell Glass, and worked in the studio there with Steve Clare and his team. And I discovered that I do like restoration. I love glass painting, but actually I really enjoyed new work. So I did a combination of, I put in for competitions. I was also asked to lecture in visual studies. So drawing and life drawing has always been a big part of my practice. And so I did a combination of part-time teaching, which is, I think, very common for creative people, and commission work. So slowly building up my portfolio. The aspects of my work that sort of, I would say, are core to the way I work. Definitely the use of handmade glasses, of which there's some behind me and on this table. And the combination, I suppose, of sandblasting. So some of these elements in front of me here, you can see where I've removed the colour to reveal, in this case, clear glass underneath. So I'm quite inspired by stone carving and quite sort of low relief artwork. And I want to get that into my work, and that combination with colour and painting. So it's quite rich. So it's always quite rich, quite tactile, a low relief surface, and quite painterly. Always quite painterly at the end of the day. And increasingly a layering up of those things in multiple pieces. And some kind of narrative somewhere, even if it's just an emotion. For commission, I will visit the site. It's incredibly important to me, to get a feel for a place, but also to see what's happening with light, what's happening with what's around it, get a feel for place. And what I tend to do is gather. The way I feel like a snowplow. I just go along and I'm like, well, maybe not a snowplow, but whatever gathers, I just sort of go along and I pull it all in. So I talk to people, I take photos, I do drawings, I take rubbings of things. I just go and look and go, what's here? Because I feel like my job is to basically take it all in, and then it percolates through me. And then it might lead to more drawing, it might lead to more photography. It could lead in all sorts of ways. It could lead to playing with just a material to see what happens there. And then sort of slowly refining that until it's, the boundary is I've got until then to make some pieces of work for a show, or the commission needs to be done, or I need to present a design, do you know what I mean? So it's a refining process. And quite often the things that I leave behind for that specific job are things that I'm really interested in, but I go, oh, I shall go back and revisit them. But quite often it's trying to find ways in that interest me, that aspects of a commission that interest me, that I can engage with. I've had a joint practice really of teaching, which became more focused on and very specific about glass painting. So I specialised in teaching glass painting to a whole range of students, undergraduates, short courses, postgraduates, other practitioners, seeing what traditional stained glass techniques offer other creative practitioners is really exciting. I find that really exciting, because normally by osmosis, I get something back as well. And it's this interesting relationship. More recently, I've moved away from teaching on a permanent basis in the university to making space for my own creative practice in non-commissioned work. So I got to a point where I wanted to do that. So just to make work that was disconnected from a brief or a site or that marriage with another agenda, which actually I find really challenging and stimulating, but to think, well, what would I make if I left to my own devices? So I realised I had to make space for that. So these were inspired by a piece of embroidery by, I think, a 14-year-old girl, which I just loved. It was just brilliant. There was some right old slapdash stitches that I just loved. I thought, she's looking out the window, wanting to be outside playing, and she's having to do this embroidery. Anyway, I broke it, and I was like, oh, okay. And it's got lots of different layers of. It's actually quite. You can really feel it's a lovely thick green flash. But at about the same time, I was in a church for a commission, and I saw these beautiful. I've always loved fragments of things, be it textiles or whatever. And there were these beautiful stone fragments, and they'd been, I just had a piece of clear glass, and they'd been mounted in little clips on this plain wall, and I thought, oh, I really like that combination of sort of a fragment of something against a very plain background. So I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these pieces, and I just started exploring, sort of just polishing the edges, and you can see it gives you this really lovely kind of tiny little halo, which I'm going to do on this piece as well. And then to bond that to a piece of just very plain, don't know what colour yet, glass, and just have that richness against sort of calmness, because I tend to, this is everything going on, so it needs a bit of balance to it. So yeah, this is in progress at the moment, and I tend to keep things just together in my eye line, so that keeps them ticking over in my head. Because it's an expensive material, especially handmade glass, and it's expensive in terms of time. It takes a lot of time to etch the surface and fire polish it and paint it and fire it and da-da-da. You've got to have sort of it's balancing the sort of the determined part with making this to then break it or cut it down or not really know what you're going to do with it. But I think it's really, I'm finding it more and more vital to, explore that a bit more. During lockdown, I was doing small scale layered pieces, autonomous pieces, sort of taking it away from the window context. This thing of how can I make pieces that someone can engage with out of the sort of an architectural context. I've been making small kind of, I feel like they're seedling works of different ways to apply glass. As I've developed more of my own creative identity, I've been able to make work that is more the way I like to work, rather than just answering someone's brief. That's a very simplistic way of putting it. But whereas I would say, someone would say, can I have, 2 tulips and a cat? I'd be like, yes. Now I'm like, well, what kind of work do I want to make? And, quite often I'm very fortunate to get the opportunity to do that. I love my workspace. In fact, I keep it much tidier than my house because it's so important to me. I've been very fortunate over the years to, start in a little shed through to what do I need to make this piece, and it's developed over the years. And so currently the studio I have is a bit of a distillation of lots of things, places I've been where I've thought, that works really well. I'm full scale stealing that idea. Everything from, putting everything on wheels so it's mobile, to how to store my glass, through how to, what kind of storage works with my brain, labelling everything because I can't remember where things are, all of that kind of stuff, so that I make it easy to do things. And I mean, I used to work quite simply with a very small set of tools. So my glass painting brushes, I would say, are my most beloved things to me. The things that I would, if it was burning down, that's what I would run in and save from the studio. Any challenges to sustaining my creative practice? No, none. It's been smooth. No, of course. Many and varied. I think, different as the time's gone on. I think, initially just trying to make a living, trying to pay for the food on the table, but also I think the most meaningful that have stayed with me are things like, well, who am I creatively? That, which I don't know that ever ends, but that constant, feeding yourself creatively, and what are you doing, and is it still alive? And that, like most things in life, ebbs and flows. That's, and the times where you feel like a complete fraud and a failure, and trying to bring yourself through that, through to very practical things like, where am I going to work? How can I make that thing? How can I deal with that person who's driving me crackers on this project? Yeah, so I was talking to a student the other day who's fantastic, who I really rate and is very self-motivated, and she was having one of those, bad weather days, and I said, in the sense I said, you need to think about it like weather. Like, it doesn't change the landscape, doesn't make the mountains any less brilliant or the sea any less brilliant, but sometimes the weather blinds you to, you know, exactly what's there. Just got to get through to the next day. And I was like, listen to yourself. You take your own advice, which is, yeah, but it's true. It doesn't change, does it? It's sort of, it's just learning to deal with it. I'm very proud of the work I've done, but actually, when I think about my career highlights, quite often they're connected with people. So when a window or a piece I've made has helped someone celebrate someone they've loved or someone they've lost, or a community, or just makes them feel better about the world or their day, I find that incredibly satisfying. I mean, I've been very privileged to work in some amazing buildings, and career highlights as well are going to some of these places and experiencing them and thinking, wow, I get to, you know, make work that's going to be here for decades past me, probably hundreds of years past me, hopefully. But mainly it's connected with people, you know, without getting too specific. It's that.